Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Carry On Friends, the Caribbean American podcast. I'm excited because we're having our first mother-daughter duo and we have some history. But before we get into that, I want to welcome Shermira and Karmel to the podcast. Ladies, welcome.
Thank you, Carrie, for having us.
All right. So Shermira, we'll start with you. Why don't you tell our community of friends a little bit about who you are, Caribbean countries you represent, and the work you do?
Absolutely. So I am from the United States Virgin Islands. I was born on the island of St. Croix, and I am considered one of those callalus, if you will. So my mother is from Aruba and my father is from Antigua. During that time, a lot of people migrated or immigrated to St. Croix. And while people decided to move to the island, it was really for employment opportunities. And at the time, we had the oil refinery Hess, which is now Hovansa, and who knows whatever other names that it's given now. But essentially, the work opportunities that were afforded to individuals from different Caribbean islands, they were able to land on St. Croix and really have lucrative opportunities. So, with that, my mother and father met in high school, and I am a product of that type of melting pot situation. I am the director of Business and Industry Workforce Training Center at CUNY. So, in my role, I am able to create policy, develop programs. I do a lot of grant writing and really realize the opportunities that individuals from lower socioeconomic backgrounds they can get into educational opportunities and vocational opportunities that can help them to move forward in their lives. What I find is that people don't see what they can be. So, in my role, I try my hardest to make sure that individuals have opportunities so they can strive for something greater. My thing is to dream big. So, when I have individuals coming in and they're dubious about having to go through our training programs or even just feel defeated going through a revolving door, my team and I, we try our best to make sure that people, one, feel that they can fit into the space, and two, give them the promise of being able to get the training that they need that would allow them to seamlessly transition into the workforce.
I have so much questions about that. But before we get there, Carmel, why don't you tell the community of friends a little bit about who you are and the work you do?
Yes, absolutely. So my name is Carmelisha Alexander, also Carmel, and I am a talent acquisition business partner at a media agency. But in terms of my Caribbean background, my mom, as she mentioned, is from the US Virgin Islands, and my dad is from St. Lucia. And definitely being from Brooklyn, I feel all of the elements of being a Caribbean, native, even though I'm not directly from there. And, it definitely feels as though all of the cultures are a bit embedded in me because I have so much exposure to all of the great Caribbean representation that we have here in Brooklyn. So, as I mentioned, I'm a recruiter and I basically got my start after graduating from SUNY Cortland with a degree in communications and came back to Brooklyn and really didn't know how I was going to jumpstart my career. And I participated in a program that was able to give me all of the foundations to the media industry, which was something that I never really focused on in college. It was more so from the news perspective or analyzing the media. But to actually work for a media agency, it definitely opened up my world towards how media really controls us and really educates us on so much and has to do with everything that we do in our daily lives. So I was a media planner for about 2 years and eventually became called to doing recruitment because I knew that my experience was pretty rare and I wanted to give the opportunity to others to be able to launch their career within the media space. So it's been really great to step into that new role and really help people launch their careers and get to know them so that they can make the next best step for them to, make the next step in their career.
Carmel, what was rare about that experience? Because you said it, like what made it rare? Was it something that is because you went to a particular college network? Give me some context around that.
So definitely within the media space, it is a who you know and how you know them. That's how you typically get positions. And for me, I didn't really know about, the media space when I was in college. Like I said, it was focused from a lens of like news or traditional news outlets. And while I knew social media was a thing and was heavily on it, I didn't understand the backstory to that. And I'm pretty sure that there are a lot of other people that look like me that don't know that there is an entire agency and industry that they can enter and have an impact on all of our daily lives. So if it wasn't for the program, I don't think that that world would have been open to me. And so I knew that, not everybody has a friend that'll be like, hey, I participate in this program and you should join it too. And I feel like that's the rarity component of it. And even in the industry now, I can see that it is starting to diversify, but it is not something that's spoken about. And even when I tried to explain what I did, it was kind of hard to do so because everyone sees it from one lens when there's an entire machine, and multiple machines that drive our interaction with media on a daily basis.
That's fascinating because what you're explaining, it's important for us to demystify whatever we see. You're basically saying there's at least three layers of things happening behind the scene. And we have to spend the time to be knowledgeable about that. And I think that's one of the things, Shermira, your programs are trying to do, get people to be confident, because in order to explore, you have to feel confident enough, like I'm sure you did with Karmel, that, yeah, I do deserve to take up space in these places. But if you don't feel like you can take up space, you're not going to go and explore the deeper career opportunities. So, Shermira, talk to me a little bit about the programs and the participation in the programs, and what are some of the challenges that you see people coming into the program with, and how your team helps them navigate some of those challenges.
Sure. So it's interesting that you mentioned, how I may have been with Carmelisha. Over the years, she oftentimes couldn't understand why I would have her participate in numerous activities, lots of extracurricular activities. As a parent, being exposed to individuals who are not afforded opportunities that I've tried to engage my children in was one that I was very adamant about pushing, so that they can have choices. And oftentimes, when I interact with individuals, they've not been giving a lot of choices. And it's particularly because of where they live or their discomfort with having to move out of their communities to realize what is really available that could be low cost or no cost. So for me, Carmelisha used to tell me, Ma, you're spreading me like butter. Like, why are you doing this? And for me, it was a lot of projection. It was projection because I knew that when I was in high school, there were things available for me to do. There were different outlets, different things that I could just channel my energy towards that really shaped who I am as an individual. And I wanted that and more for my children. And in the role that I'm in, I can say that I do similar things. The individuals that come to us are adults, young adults, older adults, but I still want them to see more than what they've been exposed to up until they've come to our training programs. So I do a vast about a training. Whatever is needed in the industry, I look at the labor market and really assess to see what jobs are in high demand. And with that, I am able to recreate or create programs that would mimic what employers need. So I usually do needs assessment. I interact with the employers. I have many employer partners on my roster where, we just go over what are the essentials that people need to move forward, exactly what hard skills are needed so that they can know the job. But then more importantly, what are the essential life skills that they need so that they can get the job and keep the job. And interestingly, the employer partners on my roster, they usually say, look, we can hire someone, they'll get the job, and we'll teach them how to do it. But we cannot necessarily teach them how to live through the experiences, to not wear their emotions on their sleeve, those soft skills, as what they like to call it. Oftentimes, employers don't have time to really train a person to become that professional. So we can give them the tasks, but if they don't know how to work through that emotionally, intellectually, and to look at it from a conceptual point of view where they're using critical thinking skills, that becomes a bit of a challenge. and really can deter individuals from having to give individuals opportunities that would take them towards an upward trajectory in whatever industry they land. So I do a lot of training around construction, green maintenance, anything that has sustainable practices. That is something that I've been doing for well over 10 years, because years ago, New York City was trying to get to the space of understanding green technology and energy efficiency. Now we see it more and more now. We have bike lanes, we have solar panels, we have heat pumps, the different equipment that would allow for us to function in a more sustainable way. So, with knowing that and where we're going as a city, it is important that the individuals who are in our training programs, they understand what the hard skills are, but then the deportment, the comportment. How are you going to perform? How are you going to carry yourself once you get these jobs with lucrative opportunities? If you're getting a salary with benefits, and of course, you want to get those salaries that are on the higher part, we want to make sure that you understand, hey, you cannot take your community to work in the sense of attitude. You have to be able to code switch. You have to know what to say, when to say it, how to say it, be able to interact with people in a way so that you have different sides of you to present. We're not asking people to be whitewashed. We're not asking people to not be their authentic selves. We're just asking people to understand how you will show up when you are faced with a challenge. Are you going to fight through it in the most antagonistic way? Or are you going to be assertive and show that you are the person who are capable of fulfilling the task while having a level of professionalism so that they can move forward wherever they decide to go?
Listen, I was here writing notes and I stopped. So, audience, Shermira and I went to high school together, and you said something. Yes, Karmel, we're going to spread on a tin because we understand what it was like to be immigrant kids. Because even though she was born in USVI, they still consider her immigrants, right? We know this. Um, but being immigrant kids in an all black school, and I'm so grateful that Monty pushed pushed me to be on moot court and mock trial, because the level of exposure I was able to have, taking the 2 train from Flatbush all the way into Manhattan, and then be able to get those soft skills to know how to interact with people not in my community. For the parents listening and for those who wanted to have this episode, it really starts at the school level and the extracurricular activities that we put our kids in, the exposure. Even if it's not an extracurricular activity, a friend of mine told my son loves Legos, and they said, well, the Architectural Society, they have family day, you could go there. And by nature of doing that, you're interacting with other kids. Boom. Next thing you said, listen, I literally did an interview yesterday because I talked about being confidently Caribbean in the workplace. And I had to say, confidently Caribbean don't mean that you're waving your Jamaican flag or you're speaking your accent. Your Caribbeanness exists whether you have a flag or not, or whether you open your mouth and speak. But we have to show up in ways that we know we can show up. And it's beyond hard work. If it's hard work, we got that locked. We get, hundreds and thousands of points for that. It's the behavior and the attitudes that we have that prevent us from being successful the way we are. And I had to learn that the hard way. So, and I'm coming to Karmel for this one. It worked for me up until a point because I might look young, fresh, and green, but when the young folks started coming into work, they brought another work culture. So up until a certain time, me being heads down and doing my work and minding my business worked very well because I was working with an older generation of folks who valued that. When the millennials and the zillions and all the other millions came in this space and it was all about, let's go out and hang out and do this, that was different. And there's many a Twitter conversations where they're like, listen, I don't want no play date. Don't force me to hang out with my coworkers. Don't this, don't that. If I don't want to go. And I get it. I get it. But what I had to learn is that that's the game. That's the rule on the field. And you have to play it. So we can always argue which football is the real football. But we in America is NFL football. If we're outside America, is FIFA going on. And it's like I had to learn the hard way through losing a job because the people who I didn't go out with because I didn't want to hang out, they didn't know me. So they were creating a reputation for me that did not exist. And a lot of that you also understood is because they didn't know you, didn't understand you. So they want to get to know you. And so, Karmel, I'm coming to you now for your young people coming into the workplace. And we grew up with Twitter and all these things. And you dash out your business on the interwebs. Like, how do you help your cohort of peers get professionally ready to be in a workplace and have to make these concessions? You said something that I really liked. Shermira, you said the different sides of you. And the analogy I used growing up in the Caribbean, you had your judging clothes, your church clothes, your school clothes. So if you have all those different types of clothes, you have all these different sides, and you just need to know which side's showing up today at work. Everyone wants to they say that I want to bring my full self to work. I don't want to bring my full self to work. I don't bring my full self to church. So why should I bring my full self to work? So, Karmel, talk to me a little bit about your generation, about what their thought process and how you're helping them through the recruiting process. I'm sure you recruit other ages, but we want to talk to specifically your demographic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we've touched on quite a bit that really helped to answer this question. So the first is definitely that component of bringing different sides of you, and being authentically yourself. And that doesn't have to show every side of you, but the different parts that you want to highlight in your career, even in your space of work. Like I am very much from Brooklyn, very much Caribbean, even when I'm in a room with people that aren't. And that's a part of my personality trait. It's actually really hard to like not be Brooklyn because and I love that. And it's a very important part of me. And I think that we should be sharing that with other people because if we don't, then they continue to establish a space where it's all about them and where they're from, and there's never another opinion. So in a way you kind of end up representing for where you're from. I don't think that your voice should be the sole voice. Like you're not speaking for everyone, but you can still represent for other people, just being in the presence and of others and sharing your experiences. I definitely also think that Twitter and sharing information is very critical and important. I understand that sometimes it does like cross bounds of privacy, but in a way that transparency lets you feel confident in navigating the workforce. It is important to keep your head down, to be diligent, to hustle, to focus on what you're doing and commit to it 100%. That is a very important skill to have, and that's something that I think I've learned from elders that have like walked me into this space of where I am now. But at the same time, we have to understand that they oftentimes in industries they convene regularly and they want to get to know each other. They talk about dogs and their kids and granted, you don't have to have best friends. Like you don't have to be best friends, but there's that human component. And I think that's what makes it easier to work in that space because you now know you can ask a question like, oh, how is your dog doing, and that's a natural human thing to ask. I mean, only ask if you care, but we're human beings and that interaction is what makes our days easier. And even when things get challenging, that's what helps us through those challenges because we get to know each other interpersonally. And because that is the space that folks typically thrive in for their career, I think it's important to step into that as well. Like I said, because it disrupts the status quo and it creates a new environment where everyone can contribute their experiences and the things that they're passionate about. So I think that transparency is very important. There definitely is a line that you don't want to cross in regards to how much you share about your life. Like you said, that you don't show up to church in the same way that you might show up to your family gatherings. But there are elements that you can pull from that, the communal aspect of that, or just sharing what you're going through because it might alleviate the experiences that other people have. And I think that's why people share so much. And, I think that should be something that's focused on more, that when we talk about salary transparencies and we talk about the situations that make us feel uncomfortable, that then lets somebody else see like, oh, wow, like I've experienced that too. And we need to keep talking about it so that it doesn't continue, or you at least know how to navigate it a bit differently, because in that heat of the moment, you might be choked up and feel like, oh, it's all on me. Like I'm the reason why this is happening when realistically it's just an issue that needs to be addressed. And we can only address it if we continue to share our stories and our experiences.
Wonderful. I want to touch on something that we all know is critical. And I mentioned Monty. I mean, I've had other mentors, but I mean, Shamir, you knew Monty was just like that person in school. And we know the importance of mentoring, particularly for people of color, young people of color coming out of college, going to workplace, even adults. It's not just, it's just people, period. We know mentoring is important, but I feel like there's a gap between aligning mentees with mentors or people trying to be mentors and finding the right mentees. Could you give me a little bit more insight? And then, Karmel, you can tell me what you're seeing from your talent acquisition standpoint. I know you don't probably see beyond after they get through the door, but you may have some insight also. So, Shamira.
It's very rather difficult to find quality mentors these days. And it goes both ways. So when you talk about mentorship, oftentimes when people hear the word mentorship or wanting to take on that role, they automatically think that it's a plug. And quite frankly, mentoring is not necessarily being a plug for someone. It is that person who's going to show you, guide you through nuances, helping you to see exactly whatever it is that you choose to get into, what it entails, so that you can be worldly and open minded about the tasks or the industry or whatever activity you plan on engaging in. So, what we're finding these days is that people want to mentor, but they're not finding good matches. And that's because there is a misconception about what mentoring is. So, for me, there's mentoring and there's sponsorship. I've had mentors, I've had people who walked me through the ropes, helped me to understand my balance, helped me to understand what the expectations are to move forward if I wanted to go in a particular space, really just helping me to know what the job entails. I've also had sponsors where, in cases, if I needed an endorsement, that person can speak on my behalf and say, no, she's solid. I really believe that she should be considered. As a matter of fact, give it to her. There's a difference. And oftentimes, if you're still in the mentoring phase, you may not be ready to be endorsed. And folks have to understand what that means for them and when they are suitable to be moved from one space to the next. So at Wingate, I had Jen Rinaldi. I had a number of teachers who believed in me. They saw things in me that I couldn't see in myself because I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be with the in crowd. I wanted to be that person, who was just comfortable to walk into the school and not necessarily be judged because of my accent or because I weren't wearing the trends. So, with having adults who saw me and my skill set, helped me to tap into the extracurricular activities that were given at the time. A lot of those things we have to actually pay for. But I have to say that we've been fortunate at Wingate to really be exposed to different types of activities. I've done the step team. I've done the drama. I tutored people after school because I had high proficiency in math. I was in the cooking class. I learned how to bake the 1, 2, 3 pound cake. Don't ask me to do that these days. But essentially, I got the foundational skills. And, even with the guidance counselors, they saw things, and recommended me becoming that sponsor for after school jobs. I did co ops. I did all these things that allowed for me, once I understood what it entails to do certain things and my, again, comportment, I then transitioned to the sponsorship phase where they said, okay, she's ready, let her go off and explore and do so that she could know what to expect, manage that expectation moving forward. So, for me, I'm very careful about who I mentor or who I take on as mentors because I don't want them to, one, not really understand what this process is going to entail. And two, there has to be a personality alignment. There has to be something that I see in that person and that person sees in me where there's a match. so that when we start to shape mindset, it goes to a space where people are not just thinking that it is finite in terms of next steps. It's really about helping to understand that there are two sides to a coin. And when you flip it, you understand exactly where it's going to land and how you are going to proceed based on that toss.
That makes total sense. And I think that one of the other challenges to that is stretching people outside that comfort limit. It's good that you may want to have someone who looks like you to be a mentor, but the reality is those are also in short supply. So if you have a short supply of mentors, period, finding one who looks like you is even in shorter supply. And I think that was a lesson we learned very early at Wingate. I remember Mr. Castanini was like, yeah, you can be a peer mediator. I was like, what is that? You know, and I think that is the one thing that you said that I think is important for anyone listening, whether you have kids in college, you're a college graduate, or you are a seasoned professional. I feel like it's important to believe those who believe in you. Sometimes people see things in you that you can't see for yourself, and you may be hesitant to do it because it's new, but do it or try it anyway. So that's what I have to say. So, Karmel, you tell me what you're seeing in terms of mentorship and development from your side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like as you mentioned, mentors and finding them are very important, but very hard to, really solidify a great bond. And while it would be ideal that you can find a mentor that looks like you and understands where you're coming from in all aspects of your life, it is very rare to come by because, unfortunately, a lot of the positions that a mentor would be in, there's still some sort of blockade. And realistically, let's be honest, majority of the folks that are in the highest positions of power do not look like us. It would be great to see that change in the next couple of years. I'm pretty sure even in your mentor, you'll find that they are working through things. And I think that's a great thing about mentorship is that you can be a mentor, but then also you find that your mentee ends up helping you answer questions. Even yesterday, had a conversation with someone that I'm forming a mentorship with. And as I was talking about like my questions that I had about my career and things that I was a little bit uneasy about, she, made it very clear to me like she also felt that uneasiness. And there were certain questions that I asked. She was like, actually, I need to do that for myself. So I think it is important to sometimes not be so fixated on the role that that person's in. Like it is great to, look at what you would like to achieve, but sometimes it comes in ways that you won't even expect it. And we each have experiences that we can learn from. And I definitely think that it helps you just navigate your career a little easier because you know that you're not alone. And that there are things sometimes you need to have that recognition like, oh, it's not just me, it's a systemic issue. Like this is something that is so much bigger and hopefully we can achieve it in my lifetime, but in some ways we're so behind that you may not even see it in your lifetime. It might be something that you have to push for your next generation's lifetime. So it is a tricky thing to navigate. I think I'm still trying to figure that out because I've had quite a few people come into my life that have been mentors and they were great mentors for that time. But as you continue to grow and expand, you'll find that you need different keys and you need different words spoken into you at different parts of your life. And the best thing for you to do is seek that. You will only attract that energy if you put that energy out there. And so definitely ask those questions, reach out to people. It might feel very intimidating, but send that cold email. The cold email is just like a random email out the blue, like, hey, I saw you on LinkedIn. I really like your background. I'm interested in this. Can you just set up 10, 15 minutes for us to chat really quickly, about your experiences thus far and take it from there. Sometimes it's just that little nudge that you need to give for your own career to things to blossom into spaces that you never thought you would be in. And definitely sponsorship is different from mentorship. Like you can have a mentor that's able to speak life into you, but having a sponsor is the next step of like, hey, I saw this and you would be perfect for that. And because you're perfect for this, I'm going to message this person that I know there and give you a glowing recommendation because I know that you are going to represent me well. That's power. Those are two different very powerful moves. You need people to speak life into you, but you also need people to speak about you in rooms that you're not currently in.
I wanted to say, let the church say amen on that one. So Carmel, tell me, what are some of the skills you're looking for when you're recruiting talent? I know it's specific to media, but generally, just what are some of the skills that you're looking for, and generally what's aligning to what the market is looking for?
Yeah, of course. I mean, definitely the media component that comes down further down the line. Like I'm, of course, looking at resumes and looking at skills and experiences. But realistically, that initial phone call is all about the human aspect. And that's why I love recruiting. It's a phone call with me and someone else. And I'm starting a clear conversation about like, what are you trying to achieve in your career? Like, why are we going to be able to help you get closer to what you're trying to do? And that's a human conversation. We all have goals, we all have things that we want to do. And so that initial conversation with a recruiter really is just to get to know you, to understand where your mind is at, and how I can next best help you achieve the goal that you're going after. And even with hiring managers, they're looking for people that have that energy and that excitement to learn. And that can be across any discipline that you're interested in. As my mom mentioned, you can teach anyone anything. We're in our jobs and we're doing the day to day. That can be transferable skills. I can easily say, hey, like, this is how you do that. But it's that energy that you bring. It's the part of you that you bring to a team because they're not looking to just have the same person in replicas doing the work. That's what AI is for. That's what computers are for. You want that human connection. You want to give a different perspective. It's just incredible within the media space that diversity plays such an important part because if we're trying to talk to people, then we need to be those people that can give that clear communication. And I'm sure that that can be applied to any industry, but for any job that you're going for, it is about you as a person and what you're trying to achieve. And so I would definitely recommend for everyone to just be very clear with whoever they're communicating with, what they're looking to accomplish, and give that energy because that's what they're looking for. If you come in and you have a bright smile and you're like, I'm ready to work and I want to learn this and I want to learn that, who would be mad at that? I would be like, this is amazing. This is someone that I can take under my wing, teach all the technical skills, but I know that when they show up in the room, they're going to bring that energy that we need to keep things going, to push through in difficult times. So I would definitely say tap into the human parts of you and really showcase that whenever you're going for a job or even on an interview.
Wonderful. Shamira, adding or just kind of segueing from what Carmel just said, how do we get people to think about what energizes them, what skills they're good at? Because that's how they show up and they're like, oh my God, I'm ready to do this. They have to be able to know, they need knowledge about what their strengths are. They need to be aware of their weaknesses. And then they need to figure out other things in terms of alignment. So, how do you help people figure those things out? Because I think that is important, but because it's such a introspective, reflective activity, it tends to not get done properly. And then it conveys by the time they reach the Carmel, they don't have the high energy because they haven't really dug deep into what they really enjoy. So, how do you help people explore what their strengths, their weaknesses, what energizes them, and how do you help them develop?
It seems as if folks compartmentalize workforce and what that truly means. And when I say the vast majority of people, what they do is they say, okay, work is work and everything else, it just doesn't matter. There can't possibly be transferable skills in what we like to do versus what we get paid to do. And for me, it's going beyond that. So oftentimes I would have individuals look at the timeline, the life timeline, look back to when they were a child, look at when they were adolescent, look at when they were in that young adult phase to where they are now, and understanding what happened in those moments that made you feel most proud of yourself. What occurred in those moments that made you feel that you were being contributory to whatever it is that life had to offer? what activities did you do that made you feel energized? That feeling of, that you found your spot, your place, your space, and just going through the timeline. And oftentimes people don't even think to go back to when they were a child, the things that they enjoyed doing. So when you talk about the Lego piece, yes, when you were playing with the Legos, what feeling did you get from putting together those pieces? When I look at my children when they go through the developmental stages and I see the way how they put things in order based on how they build the blocks or figured out how to put things in order, I realize that that is part of their personality trait. And once you understand what those personality traits are, it helps you to understand what it is that you're capable of and how you're able to stretch beyond your bandwidth, right? Or even go beyond your growing edge. And with that, we then help people to feel satisfied in the sense that, wait a minute, this is really a part of me. This is about me creating something that is really in my best interest, not so much for what the employers want to see. Because if you are confident in what you do and what you've done in your life, once you interface with an employer, interviews become the reverse. If you are confident and you know that you need this job, but at the same time, you know you can do this job, it is up to you to start interviewing the organization or the company that you are going for because you need to figure out if that's the space for you to be in. So, in all that skills development, looking at the timeline, helping individuals to understand what it means to show up on time, not too early, but not just close to the time, but being on time, under helping people to understand that you have to create relationships, that human factor that Carmel talked about, create relationships with people. I understand that some people don't want to, go beyond work and hang out. But sometimes it's necessary to really just engage in discussion. And we try to build camaraderie with the students, or we like to call them trainees. We tell them, look, you're going to be in this space with a bunch of strangers for X amount of time. It is up to you to try to establish, forge relationships with folks because you never know in the future who's going to be your business partner, who's going to be the person who's going to pull you along in an opportunity if they get there first. You just never know. So we want to be able to help individuals understand that we need each other first and foremost. No man is an island. That's cliche, but it's the truth. We need each other. And if we are kind, if we know that we can strut in the most effective and powerful way, people will gravitate to that and understand, hey, I heard that when you said when you were 5 years old, you played with Legos, and now we're in this construction training program and you did framing very well. I have a job with a union who wants to do framing and sheetrocking, and I think you'll be the ideal candidate. It is that what we create or co-create with folks so that they can see where they started and where they can end up based on the innate ability to believe that they're able to get through whatever it is that they're experiencing.
Yes, Shermira, you think from moot court and mock child I would be doing a podcast? I mean, through lines
Yes.
makes sense, right?
Yes. The
So,
communication factor, the part where you're actually asking questions that are very intentional, you're able to extract information based on what is said. It is very similar to what the lawyers do in the courts. They say, per that last comment, and they carry on. This is exactly what it was. You're just tapping into the most creative side that fortunately society is now accepting. Whereas before, you probably would have been in that space of being a lawyer or a legal aid or something, but you found the creative aspect of it because something else in your life when you were younger, you gravitated to wanting to create and hold on to your Caribbean culture in a way that allowed the masses to understand the power within. So yes, there's alignment there entirely.
thank you. Um, let's talk about networking, the misconceptions around it, and get your thoughts on it, because I think it's the one thing that people, they get broadly, but don't apply and do in actuality because it's harder. It's awkward to make friends, friends as adults. But I just learned, I shouldn't say I just learned, but the importance of building a network wide and deep came home so clearly in the last couple months. So I'd love to hear your thoughts around how you go about building a network, fostering that network, because some people feel it's going to an event and getting Shermira and Karmel business card, I'm gonna just know them. there's an element of fostering that relationship, nurturing that relationship. And then I don't know, maybe the next step when you need to go for an ask, or how you tap into that network. So anyone wants to start?
Yeah, I can definitely start. Networking is a tricky thing to navigate at first in your career. It's definitely something that has intimidated me over the years. And I think because there are environments where you are in a room and you just like have a little quick chit chat and you exchange the business card, because you're kind of programmed to think of it in that way. I think that's what causes the anxiety for me. And so, what has been working and what I would give my encouragement for others is to kind of find ways that networking feels easy to you. And with social media, I think that that's one of the easiest ways to do it. There's so many people that have a presence online, and you'd be surprised how quickly you can build your network in a way by just reacting to what they post. Like they post it for people to see and for people to like. So if you see something and you like it, I personally think that it's easier to interact in a social media setting and be like, wow, this is so cool. I've been watching you for some time. I'm rooting for you because I truly am. I'm watching it and I'm like, oh, wow, this is so cool. Share your thoughts that are on your heart, because that's that human connection that you can make with that person. And then if you can take it from there to the next level, I think that's the game changer. So you start off with a couple of interactions online, but then take it further. Hey, like, would love to meet up with you for coffee, would love to check out this event with you. We both have this interest in reading Caribbean books and Caribbean literature. There's an event coming up. Would love to go there with you, because they're already navigating their lives, and if you can make it seamlessly aligned with what they're already interested in, what you're interested in, I think that eases the anxiety. As you move forward, though, of course, you do have to build upon your skills of knowing how to communicate with people in a short span of time. But as you grow older and you can easily talk about what you do, I think it will come a little bit naturally. And so, for younger people that already spend their time on social media, I would say use that as your key, because you already feel comfortable in that space and you have people that are also comfortable with interacting in that platform or in that arena, and hopefully you can take it further from there. So that's something that I've been working on. It definitely is a scary thing to jump into, but you just have to find ways that it speaks to you a little easier. For some people, they're also like straight shooters. They like to be in spaces where you can be face to face, and if that's your style, then maybe you just set small goals for yourself. Maybe you set the goal of speaking to two people at an event and calling it that, because that's all the emotional energy and all the energy that you can provide for that day. You just have to find what makes you feel comfortable and try to be yourself as authentically as possible. Because if you aren't, then it's kind of easy to detect. If I'm not comfortable in this space and I'm, there like, hey, can I get your number? Like it's like, whoa, like, this is a little too much. Or if you try to force yourself onto someone, please, can you be my mentor? You can't just be a mentor from one meeting. You have to build a connection. You have to try to find the things that you two are on the same page about. So definitely try to tap into what makes you already feel comfortable and connect with others in that way as well.
Well, Carmelisha would tell you, I don't like networking. I don't like it. I just don't like it. It is something that I find to be rather superficial. I rather my work speak for itself. And if you know what I bring to the table, I'd rather develop meaningful relationships with people so that the endorsements can continue to go. To me, networking is just overwhelming for me. And oftentimes you would meet someone today and see them 2 weeks later and say, hey, we met at that event. And they look at you like, oh, yeah, right. I don't like that. If we know each other and if we know of each other's work, we can speak to that on so many levels and then create opportunities. I have to say that a lot of opportunities that I get in terms of people wanting to work with me and my institution is really because they see my work, they know my work, and with my name attached to the work, it makes them feel comfortable to actually approach me. And then, of course, the relationship building that comes. So if we build consortiums, or we have partner engagement opportunities, or if we're part of certain types of programming that would allow for us to really build bonds, that to me is more meaningful. That whole thing with collecting business cards and just to say that you know or interact with certain people, that to me, it's not as an effective approach in terms of when you want to get something done, having to rely on that person to really help spearhead or move with you in the direction that you want to go.
I'm a hybrid because I don't necessarily like the social media online thing. You already know this, Shamira, the Facebook account there, but I barely use it. I make my connections in the emails, in the DMs. Like it's one on one. When it's one on one, I go thrive. When it's out in social media and performing, I can't manage it. So I pay attention to the people, even with the podcast, who engage and interact. When I notice that they do, I'm going to start emailing you. I'm going to start communicating with you that way because that way I can focus on building that relationship as opposed to the quantity of it, right? Because the quantity is what makes a lot of people feel overwhelming because if you get 5 business card, you're going to feel forced to catch up with 5 people. Whereas if you're diligent about making one connection, then it's just easier to manage as opposed to trying to boil the ocean when we just need one little teacup, right? So I think that's my approach to networking, but I'm hoping to have more conversations around that. Ladies, I loved this conversation. We must have it again around graduation season. But I think generally, because I think career conversations are not only for graduates or those graduating, it's for all of us because we're having to reinvent ourselves at different stages because people are taking longer to retire. The jobs are evolving with technology. Lord, them I got mash up them head about the chat GPT, all of this other stuff, right? So technology is causing us to evolve and needing to adapt to our jobs. And I've always felt as part of this podcast mission is we need to talk about career just as much we talk about entrepreneurship because most of us not going to start a business, but most of us will be in a full-time job. And we need to know how to survive and thrive in corporate America. So we can then network and say, oh, that's Shamira's daughter. Me know it. Come, Carmel, come over here. So, like everyone else is doing it. But we need to take up space in corporate America so we can help other people in our communities come through the rank same way. That's how it works. And some people might say, well, that's not fair. Well, that's how we build networks. We need to be able to build other people up and we need to help people be career ready or, just equipped and be nimble and be flexible because every week the technology is having to make you adjust to something, right? So we have to be able to be versatile because that's what it requires. And who knows what the jobs are going to look like next year. But I think it's so important for us to talk more about career, how we're recruited, how are we planning for our careers, how are we networking, how are we making connections inside the workplace. That's a whole other conversation because my very first job out of college, my first job in a law firm, and when I got out of the law firm, that job. Once I stayed within those industry, I'm getting a job because somebody else said, yeah, Carrie Ann, I'm gonna give her that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or a recommendation. And the only way those come is through building networks and cultivating relationships within the workspace. So before I wrap up, is there anything else that either of you would like to say to the audience that you didn't cover? Like one thing you're like, oh, I need to say this.
Absolutely. Just to dovetail from what you said in terms of being that quasi, person who appreciates networking in terms of social media, I have to agree with Carmel that it is a powerful thing. However, people have to know how to differentiate which social media platform would be best to put out the information. So of course, there's the Facebook, there's the Twitters, there's the Instagram, but oftentimes people forget the LinkedIn. That it's too professional. Oh no, there's not enough drama on LinkedIn. There's enough drama on there to know if you need to get a job or a training program or skill sets, that is the place to go. And people aren't filling in those spaces so that individuals like Carmel could outreach and say, hey, I see that you are interested in dot, dot, dot. Would you be interested in having a 2-minute conversation? That type of networking, I truly appreciate because one, in the forefront, you have information that's there for people to tap into to see who you are. It's like your visual elevator pitch right there in a space that would allow for the masses to see what it is that you bring to the table. So with that, we have to understand the different pockets of networking, social media being an enormous tool that can propel us in an area where we need to be. And, also follow through, with some of those discussions so that you can develop those sound relationships and people can then continue to endorse you in the most impactful way. So that was my thing in terms of the media part. Social media has been my friend for sure in terms of getting information out because I like to share information. Because if I were to hold on to it, what good is it going to be for me? So if I put it out there and I find that social media is able to take it places where I need for it to go, that is my form of, networking. Otherwise, that person to person business card thing,
I
let's
hear
have
you.
coffee.
I hear you. I hear you. Carmel.
Yes, absolutely. You definitely touched on such a important part because a lot of my job does involve LinkedIn and finding people, sourcing people. And you'd be surprised how many people do not have like a profile or any additional information. So the more information and context that you can provide on your LinkedIn makes it easier for me to do my job because now everything is just like filtering in. Like you said that you're interested in beauty. Boom, I can see that. Now I know that I have an opportunity with beauty and I can make that connection there. So definitely leverage LinkedIn. And I think my final point is just for people to really just try to reflect on the things that bring them joy, the things that come naturally to them, because you'd be surprised how many transferable skills can be applied to any job that you're interested in. As long as you have that drive and that energy to do the work, honestly, I think any job is yours. You just have to, shift your mentality and recognize that you're not just being interviewed, you're also interviewing other people. And with that, you have to just be able to say what you like and what you don't like, and what you want to be able to strengthen in, or things that you want to maybe make up for with your weaknesses. So definitely do self reflection and know that you already have the keys to be successful. You just have to activate them. You have to put them in the right doors and turn, the knob and everything. So you are fully capable. You belong in these spaces and you can be the transformation that we need. If we don't have you there, then there's no one to speak on all of the things that need to be changed.
Ladies, thank you. Wonderful conversation. So if you wanted the audience to connect with you, where can they find you? I'll start with you, Carmel.
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. That, like I said, I'm always on LinkedIn for work. Feel free to type in Carmel Alexander or even Carmelisha Alexander, and feel free to send me over a note. Let me know that you came from this podcast so that I have the context and we can connect and take it from there. But definitely on LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Shamira.
I'm also on LinkedIn. So it depends on what you're trying to outreach me for. I will respond accordingly. But yeah, social media is the way. Shamira Busby Forrester on LinkedIn.
Wonderful, ladies. All right. And as I love to say at the end of every episode, walk good.